Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our live session today. My name is Larissa. I'm an event planner at Reactor, joining you from Brazil. Before we start, I have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. The session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand here on the Reactor YouTube channel within 48 hours. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions. I will now turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you all and welcome, Olivia and Michael.
Thanks, Larissa. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Azure Decoded. I'm Olivia Nix. I'm on the Microsoft Marketplace team where I work with partners and founders who are building and commercializing AI products. So if you've been around the partner ecosystem for any amount of time, you probably know that the journey from we built something cool to we're actually making money from it is where many of the hard lessons live. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So joining me is Michael Glaros, the founder of Artemis Industries. And this is a company that's been building and bringing new products to market through Microsoft Marketplace. So Michael, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what Artemis does?
Yeah, thank you so much, Olivia. So we at Artemis started with a kind of a unique proposition, which was looking at how AI infrastructure, governance, really all the things that need to go around the AI app, not focusing so much on the model and the agents per se, but how do you bring those things to market? And we partnered with Microsoft very early on because of all the really rich capabilities that Azure brings in terms of governance, security, operability. And so we actually did two things in tandem. One was we felt that we needed to really have a use case with agents, with all those things first to kind of really understand the shape of it. And so we're actually going to talk about two different business lines of business, two different products today. And then second was then taking those learnings and putting them into the actual infrastructure and the scaffolding.
Awesome. So thanks, Michael. And for everyone out there, this is a bit of the agenda of what we're going to cover today. Our session title, Architecture, Readiness, Release. And we are going to run through each of those steps. But first, we'll start out with a demo. And as Michael sort of alluded to, he's going to walk us through the solutions that he's built to specifically and his experience selecting the right offer type on Marketplace for his target customer. We'll use that as a springboard to go deeper on how architecture decisions determine your monetization options. And then we'll take a look at what readiness means in this context based on how the publishing workflow in Microsoft Foundry and Marketplace works. And so our goal is at the end of this hour for you to have a clear mental model for evaluating your own agent or AI product against these paths. And I do think we have a quick poll. So maybe Larissa, you can put that up, but we're just curious to better understand where you all are in terms of your own process or progress against building an agent, and if you're looking to go to market through the marketplace. So taking a look at the reality that founders face by looking at different types of solutions, who you're selling to, what their needs are, Michael's going to talk us through what he has found with his company Artemis and explain some of the lessons learned and maybe some of the hardships faced so that you all can avoid that. So Michael, do you want to start with PromoGoat?
Yeah, definitely. So just a word about PromoGoat as a business. So I will kind of give just a brief overview there. Actually, oh, great. We'll start with the slide there and dive into it. So PromoGoat is the chief marketing officer for small and medium businesses. So the idea is if you wanted to, you run a restaurant, you run a florist locally, and you're just so busy running your business, you don't have time to keep up with marketing your business on social media or getting into the complexities and nuance of online search planning. PromoGoat's got you covered. It's a SaaS-based product that uses an agentic agency. So the origin story is really fascinating. We partnered with Telia and Pavlo BBDO, a creative advertising agency in the traditional sense that serviced very large clients, and they were getting squeezed out of servicing smaller clients because the margins just weren't there. we thought that if we created an agentic agency, pun intended there, we could actually transform the business and make a traditional advertising agency in the mold of Mad Men into actually a cloud services company. And that's effectively what we did.
I love the visualization of Mad Men in the cloud. But so the initial go-to-market strategy was to drive buyers to marketplace. So can you maybe share your screen and walk us through sort of the process you went through and what that looked like?
Definitely. So let me do that. So as we're getting set up here, so here is the view. So this was one of the things that was really interesting is this is kind of the classic view we sort of know and love as a builder, somebody working in Azure Marketplace. I'm going to deploy something, and we thought this would be kind of our natural entry point for a promo goat buyer because being sort of the we've been tremendously supported from Microsoft with Microsoft for Startups is where we got started. We got our initial credits. We're a Microsoft Cloud and AI partner. And so trying to do all the right things, we wanted to make sure that our listing showed up in Marketplace, it was transactable, and we did that. And we did a private offer. So you can see here that we've got these private plans, and we listed it. And so we got our promo code offer built out. It showed up in Marketplace. And then we had the ability to transact right there. And we thought, oh, this would be really cool. We could drive our customers to Marketplace and to buy them. But then as we started getting into it, so now if I go back and look at sort of in the Partner Center real quick, I'm just going to find my way back to sharing and get off of that and share my Partner Center view. This is where we start to see a little bit of friction. So here is the offer in Partner Center. And so that the offer that we just saw in Marketplace, I'll show you how it was built. So the first thing we did is we had to figure out the plans. And so this was interesting because we had to think about how do we actually want to sell PromoGoat to the customer. So again, you imagine you're trying to convince a local restaurant, a local coffee shop to sign up. Intuitively, these folks are going to think about other SaaS products they're using, commercially available things that have kind of a small, medium, large type of plan, monthly subscription, something like that. And so when we came to start doing our offer setup, we realized that there was going to start to be potentially some points of friction. Not so much in the listing itself. So the listing was pretty straightforward, and I'll show you what that looked like. We could write our description, link to our privacy policies, our contacts, our logos. All this stuff was pretty straightforward. But then it started getting into the technical configuration, and this is where we started to have an aha moment. Is the more we looked about having the webhooks and the tenant IDs and realizing that you needed to integrate with the fulfillment APIs. And the reason for that was you needed to have this connection point so that when there's a subscription event, so a customer comes in, they want to subscribe to PromoGoat, the expectation is they're going to have either an M365 tenant or an Azure tenant that's going to facilitate those events via that webhook, via those fulfillment APIs. So then if we go back a bit, so let me go back to the website here. It kind of throws a bit of friction in the experience. And so if I look at, for instance, here the PromoGoat website. So if I'm a prospective user and I'm coming in, here's the website, and I'm intrigued and I want to sign up for an account, and great, I hit login, and then I'll notice I don't have so now there's potentially 2 points. So do I go to Marketplace and do I sign up there? And then I have to worry about kind of the webhook and the fulfillment APIs, or do I just continue on the workflow right here where probably as a small business, I'm more likely to have a Gmail or an Outlook.com address, maybe even something like that. So then it starts to be confusing for the person signing up as to which way they go. So that was kind of our first indicator that maybe going straight to marketplace to transact for this particular segment wasn't necessarily the right choice.
Got it. So what you're highlighting here is co-sell through marketplace is really designed for an enterprise sales motion. So if the buyer is an IT organization with an existing Azure commitment, having that Microsoft field sellers with co-sell compensation, all of the like the heavy machinery behind the scenes and mechanics, that's genuinely powerful. But when your buyer is an SMB owner, I think we've talked about some restaurant owners or smaller legal offices or things of that nature. They're not opening up an Azure portal. You're going to be speaking a different language if that's their first experience of purchase. So, what did you end up doing for Promo Goat?
Yeah, so that's exactly right, Olivia. What we did was basically went with Stripe as our primary commerce rail. So the idea is just a bit about the architecture. So you have Entra ID. So we do have kind of an external Entra ID. So PromoGoat users would get registered. Now they can register with because we have the identity federation set up. So they could bring a Gmail address. They could bring an apple.com. Any of the typical usual suspects can get registered. They'll get plopped in our directory. They'll then swipe a credit card because it's a monthly subscription fee via Stripe. Now, all that said, though, what's kind of interesting is while our core segment is small and medium businesses, we've actually uncovered a new use case, which is this idea of freelance agencies, where you have a freelancer that's going to plan on behalf of those small businesses. And then, interestingly enough, we've actually had some larger businesses. Like there's a leading bank here in Cyprus that they have a small business banking program, and one of the benefits they're thinking of extending is PromoGoat subscription to their subscribers. In that case, and it just so happens the bank happens to be an Azure customer, that actually might bring us back around. So we kept that marketplace offer kind of dormant in a private state because it might come back full circle where from the bank's perspective, because they have a tenant ID, because they transact through Microsoft and that's okay with them, that might be a scenario for it. But the usual customers, they're going to be sort of going in through Stripe, swipe their credit card, and off they go.
Got it. Okay, and then just Larissa, an aside, you can close the current poll. I do think we have another one that I am interested to see for those who want to participate that highlights kind of the problem that or opportunity decision making point that Michael's had to go through of who's the core segment that you are going to be selling into. And so for the first example that he just gave of Promo Goat with like the earlier customers, but it sounds like now there's actually more opportunity to sell into larger organizations that do have IT departments. It was the right decision to go into sort of a Stripe motion and not push everyone into Microsoft Marketplace. Many SMBs do mimic more B2C behavior when it comes to their software purchases. So what exactly have you found with this other solution too? I know we talked about Promo Goat, but that you are also developing a more enterprise focused app.
Yeah, before we get there, Olivia, because I saw this chat question and then you made me think of something else. So the thing you made me think about was co-sell. I forgot to mention that was another key piece too. And that what sparked it was there was a question in the chat, what were the business challenges in developing PromoGoat? I'm actually going to link these two together because they do, believe it or not, they go together really, really well. So let me, and hopefully the screen share is going there good. So I will log in and I want to show something real quick. So the reason I mentioned co-sell is it's one of the many, many benefits you get out of programs like Microsoft Cloud and AI Partner and
Sorry,
ISV
Michael, your
Success. Yes,
screen's not currently
sharing.
sharing.
Okay, let me try that again. I think I abandoned too quickly there. All right, and share screen. Okay, and let me know if that comes through.
Yep.
Okay, great. So one of the many benefits is co-sell. The idea that, especially as a startup, it's really difficult to onboard and hire and activate a field sales force. And of course, with a solution like PromoGoat, where we're focused on many, many small businesses as potential customers, that would be a really nice thing to have. And so one of the things we were thinking about is, okay, as we get deeper into the ISV success and cloud and AI partner programs, the idea of co-sell became really attractive. The difficulty is with an industry specific solution that's focused on creative marketing and creative campaign planning and search planning and making ads and things like that. It's really a stretch to ask a Microsoft seller who's very much accustomed to dealing with enterprise IT or dealing with I would say more traditional line of business scenarios, like let's say maybe financial services or manufacturing, that have sort of applications that are kind of built around those spaces. To ask that field seller, that co-sell person, to then learn all of this and all the nuance in this space, um, it could be quite tricky. And so, thinking about as a founder, how do I want to best maximize that co-sell benefit? Do I want to really align with sort of what Microsoft sellers are naturally talking to their customers about, or do I have to sort of ask them to learn all these other use cases and terminologies and look for fits? That's probably going to take them out of their day to day, what they're optimized to do best. So that's that one in a nutshell. And then asking about the other scenario.
Yeah, the
So
AI can and how you went about deciding whether to use Microsoft Marketplace and the offer type, just a completely different type of solution.
yeah, so an interesting thing happened along the way of dealing with PromoGoat, was the fact that we started seeing some architectural patterns emerge about how to deal with agents. So what we did with PromoGoat, so as you saw on the last screen, there was kind of three agents there highlighted. You had a creative planning agent, we have a search planning agent, we have a strategy agent, we now have an ad making agent. So all of it, so it's this multi-agent system that's all working together. There's also MCP tools involved where we make calls out to third-party services to go retrieve data, to really examine the websites of the businesses, to do all the things to gather the information we need to execute the plan. That started to reveal this architectural pattern. And so we started to see that there was characteristics of what, when we look at things like the well-architected framework and the cloud adoption framework that Azure provides, but then we had our own lived experiences. We started to develop our own opinions, especially using things like MCP, Model Context Protocol. We saw an enterprise pattern take shape, and we said, well, if PromoGoat runs like this, and we start to have some characteristics around, you know, um, API management for MCP, zero trust networking, where we put all the resources on their own private VNet, running agents is part of app service. We thought, hey, wait a minute, we could maybe scaffold this whole business up. And so what that led us to think about was this idea of a separate product that could be more in that enterprise space. So then if I can get back to here for a second. So what we did is turn that into an Azure managed app. And that started to become the shape for our offer. And so let me know if you can see this, Olivia, if this is showing through okay.
Yeah, we can see that. And I don't think
Fantastic.
I knew the origination story of sort of the gap in the market and opportunity that you saw going from PromoGoat to AI Can. So interesting. Good to hear that background.
Yeah, no, and it really started to say these are problems that we suspect that many builders would have, because while we're doing this, we're in these incubator spaces and we're watching people vibe code, and we're watching people really struggle to get over that hump from prototype to production or getting into market in kind of a bigger way. And then at the back of our head, we're thinking, well, at the same time, if we could do things that are really also kind of maybe prepping you for better certification results in marketplace, or, again, we started off with the Azure Pass services. So that became something that felt like it was very aligned with a co-seller. So when we go back to that discussion of what would a Microsoft co-seller naturally have a conversation with an enterprise IT customer about, it would be these topics. It would be, how do I think about, I've got a lot of shadow IT in my environment, or shadow AI in my environment. Right now, I feel like I'm the office of no, because my line of business wants to go sign up for every new Gen AI tool under the sun. And I feel kind of under siege, and I'm saying no. And I don't really have a good answer in return. And so that really gave us that kind of enterprise shape. And so what we did, from the design perspective, is then approach it as a managed app. And
Okay.
so what that meant was, again, PromoGo naturally fell into SaaS. And so there it was like, okay, we went to SaaS because it is a SaaS, and we thought the SaaS offer type made the most sense. And it would have, apart from the fact that our customer segment wasn't, instinctively on Azure, on, a tenant and so forth. With Can, we had a lot of decisions to make, because we knew that we wanted to put it in the customer tenant. So we knew it wasn't going to be SaaS. So Can was almost like the inverse of PromoGo, where we said,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to eliminate a SaaS offer type from the get-go. And instead, what we're going to do is figure out, how do we put it in the tenant. So now once we think about putting it in the customer's tenant, and the reason we did that was because the data, we knew that we did not want to be custodians of the customer data. Like, we wanted to make sure that the AI inferencing and the scaffolding and the cloud service infrastructure goes to the customer, not the other way around. So once we eliminated SaaS for AI Can, we said, okay, that leaves us container apps, VMs, Azure Managed App. And we felt that Azure Managed App was kind of a nice happy medium to start,
Yeah.
because we could have a little bit of control. We had a lot of flexibility in the architecture, because we didn't want to necessarily make the assumption that everybody's going to have Kubernetes expertise from the get-go. So we opted for Azure Managed App.
Awesome. And thanks, Larissa put up the poll. If anyone wants to participate, just to understand who your customer buyer and customer profile is. And then maybe we can also just pull up the side-by-side view that I'm sharing of taking a look at Michael's two offers. We had PromoGo, AI Can, and a lot of the decision-making points, like thinking through where that product runs. So SaaS is going to be in Artemis's Azure tenant, more appropriate for SMBs, non-IT departments who are less concerned about data actually leaving their own systems and wanting to maintain data sovereignty and being super secure about that. So in that scenario, on that right-hand side with the AI Can, marketplace was the correct channel. We'll go into it, but I imagine just easier procurement, more traction immediately, that co-sell alignment that we've been alluding to, and we'll cover a little more in depth about what that is and why it's so powerful. But with PromoGo, you've got the same exact company, same founder, same architectures and ecosystems within Microsoft, but just having those two products with different customer profiles are leading to really distinct go-to-markets and distribution channels. And so that's really, one of the messages that we want to get out and make sure that anyone building is thinking about early, so that you can start to architect and orchestrate based on meeting your customers, how they prefer to buy.
And another thing too, Olivia, both of these concepts were really graduates of the envisioning program. So we went through the AI envisioning process, and that was really clarifying, because once we really started to think about who the buyers were, who the customers that had the most pain points, that really sort of crystallized for us that yes, a CAN customer is likely a CIO at a bank or at a hospital group, that already has an existing, maybe they have a Microsoft Azure commit, maybe they have a lot of experience buying from marketplace. And so for them, it's much more important that they have that control. Whereas a PromoGo customer, once we profile them through that envisioning process, we see that they could be all over the place. They could have QuickBooks and maybe a
Yeah.
personal M365 subscription, but they're certainly not technology is not front and center for them. Their day-to-day is kind of running their business. And so going through that exercise really helped us clarify and position these projects appropriately.
Awesome. So just taking one step back, you brought this up a little bit with your experience, but I want to highlight a common conversation that we're having with software companies before taking a deeper look into how that architecture drives the offer type and monetization route. So when founders and product leaders are looking to build and commercialize AI products, take advantage of all the new fast-paced innovation that's happening, there's really two paths. One is embedding AI into an existing product. You've already got customers, you've got billing set up, an existing UX, overall lower cost. This is a faster route to revenue as your adoption curve will likely track to your existing install base. On the flip side, you can build a net new agent, and there is a greater opportunity there for upside, but it's greenfield. You're building new infrastructure. There's significant investment in new audience acquisition. So higher cost, potentially slower to revenue, but you're opening up a new addressable market. Michael, does that resonate with you?
100%, Olivia. Yeah, I think that's a really handy framework to evaluate it with, because it is those three rows there that you point out: the architecture, time to revenue, and cost, and they all kind of work in tandem. And you really have to sort of balance them, at any point in your journey in your life cycle.
Awesome. And then once you've sort of determined what your solution and product is, there are these 4 offer types that are really relevant specifically to AI apps and agents. We've touched on the SaaS and the managed application, but giving you a more a flyover overview of these, you've got the SaaS offer, which is the most common path that we see for software companies, where they run that app in their own Azure tenant. The billing options are flexible per user, flat monthly rates, 1 to 5 year terms. You can also do metered based on consumption, which is particularly relevant here. And that SaaS offer really has some of the strongest marketplace alignment of any offer type. It gives you full transactability. You can be co-sell eligible, and it really surfaces across all of the Microsoft products such as Azure, Microsoft 365, and Microsoft Foundry.
And Olivia, while we have this up, there's a really interesting question that just came in. What motivates the creation of a product on Marketplace as opposed to a product published on the web?
Yeah.
So this is a perfect time for this question. For us, I can speak to, especially in looking at these two products, Marketplace was appealing especially for Can, for a lot of reasons. Number one, the customer segment that we target has very strong procurement relationships with Microsoft. And as a startup, those are very difficult for us. So when a startup is targeting a bank or a healthcare provider or a government agency, there's typically lots of procurement checks and steps and processes to clear. If instead I say, get my solution from Marketplace, and they've already cleared Microsoft procurement, they have a very natural transactional relationship with Microsoft, they can buy from Microsoft, still get my solution, I still get paid, but it saves me months of aggravation and agony going through that procurement process. The other thing Marketplace does is it provides the click-through licensing. So I don't have to go get outside legal counsel, draft my own license terms, deal with my IP protection. I basically sort my IP with Microsoft. It's click-through terms. And again, if they procure it from Marketplace, very straightforward. The other thing, we happen to be based in Cyprus. We're in the European Union, but we're trying to sell around the world. Marketplace, at kind of the click of a button, I can be live in 140 countries. And Marketplace sorts out the billing, they sort out the multi-currency, sorts out the tax, all of those issues. I just have to deal with that once. I go into my seller profile, I establish all that, and then Marketplace sorts it out. So if my buyers have that relationship with Microsoft, where it's a buyer with IT that's very used to spending with Microsoft, it's a fantastic solution. I would say for us, where it didn't work out is when the buyers, like the promo go type of customer buyers, they don't have that kind of enterprise relationship with Microsoft. If they have a
Yeah.
relationship with Microsoft, it's more of like a consumer relationship or a one-off product relationship, not got kind of like company to company type of relationship.
Got it. Awesome. So the other three offers on the right-hand slide here, really, as you think about, Michael, you were mentioning the data sovereignty and some of those concerns, particularly with enterprises, anyone who is regulated. But those are the offer types that you'll choose when your customer needs the workload inside either their Azure Kubernetes service cluster, or sort of the managed application, which is a bit of the best of both worlds. For the container, billing is per core, per pod, per cluster, or it can be metered. And I know some of these things are not, this is overly simplistic. There is a complex engineering lift if you're going this route. You're packaging your agent as a deployable image with dependencies, infrastructure as code templates. But just to have a sense when you take a step back, and again, coming back to like, who are you selling to? What are you trying to do in the market? What's the gap you're filling? And really being strategic and thoughtful about that as you're using Microsoft Marketplace. I want to come back to the managed application, which really has emerged a bit as the middle ground. So the solution runs in the customer's Azure subscription, but you, the software company, the publisher, retain operational control and you can push updates. So you supply Azure resource templates and an application UI. And this is really a great fit for some of the complex enterprise deployments where the customer wants the workload on their subscription for compliance reasons, but they are not looking to get something else that they have to manage themselves. And Michael, I know when we were talking before, you had some thoughts that you've just been hearing with other co-founders as well about this opportunity of going to market with a managed app.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Olivia. I think it was one of those things where, maybe it was kind of losing favor a little bit, but I think the era of AI and agents and data sovereignty really bring it back to the front. I think when I think about the difference between managed apps and container offers, the container offer really makes a lot of sense if the customer has deep Kubernetes expertise. If they've really standardized on Kubernetes, they've done a lot of lift and shift, maybe they're even multi-cloud, then that container app offer makes a ton of sense. But at least in, I can speak for, the European Union. There's still very mixed. There's a lot of mixed architectures that you see. So starting off for Kubernetes for us didn't, wasn't the entry point we wanted. I think we'll definitely get there for sure because there are certainly, especially you get the larger end of the customers, that's where it makes a lot of sense. But I think the first thing to ask is kind of like, what's the skill level of the IT environment that you're selling into? If they're more generalist, then managed app might be a really great way to go, where it's got the benefit of the sovereignty. The other nice thing about managed app is you have a lot of flexibility over how much you as the publisher can get in and manage that. So you can work out like we want to just push updates, or you can have some more greater control depending on what kind of service offering you're there. So it really, I think a hidden thing, and it might even emerge as kind of a fourth row in the fullness of time, but what's the IT skill level of the buyer and how much help do they need from the publisher for tasks like software update and maintenance?
Yeah. Awesome. I will quickly touch on we've also got the Copilot-Based Solutions. So the agents and connectors for Microsoft Copilot. I think it's like 400 million users, something like that across Microsoft business applications. But that offer type is specific for MCP tools, MCP servers, Copilot extensions. Something to highlight here is that the Copilot surface is that user interface, but not the actual billing mechanism. So you would link that to a SaaS offer so that you have that for transactability or even a free offer. But discovery in this scenario is strong. It surfaces in that Copilot agent store, the Microsoft 365 admin center, But just remember that you need that SaaS backend linkage here for the monetization component. And then we do have a bit of just a decision tree. We won't belabor this. Michael just did a great job of sort of describing this in real life and then describing it also as just the actual more academic exercise of thinking through who you're selling to and what their skill set is and what they're looking to do. Yeah, I think another thing, Michael, that we had talked about was a bit of maybe some of the drawbacks, or there are solution types out there today that don't necessarily fit cleanly into Microsoft Marketplace, which we, brought up with the SMB example and promo goat. And so, just want to say aloud that you're not alone. The platform today is optimized for SaaS and Azure native workloads. There could be more partial alignment and further future alignment, definitely on some multi-cloud architectures and agent-only experiences without a service layer. But you also just need to come back again to these upfront business and strategic questions about what helps you commercialize today. And that said, there's a clear path forward for a large class of AI products, and we're going to be laying that out.
The other thing too is it's dynamic. So just because you publish your offer, you don't have to stay stuck with it. Like for instance, the promo code example. So having that experience and going through that, and even though right now the SaaS offer is kind of dormant, it may come back around. Like with those banking customers that I mentioned that might want to offer that out. With Can, we're constantly reevaluating our offer, and we know we are going to at some point create a secondary offer for container apps, but it's constantly looking at the offers. And so the decision tree is not a forever thing. Once you make it, you're not just stuck there. And I gotta stick with the managed app. I will say the one thing I'm curious to learn about is I haven't gotten there yet. I hope to have this problem someday. Is as you have multiple offers and as they start transacting and generating sales and rewards, how do those, I'm hoping as the publisher, there's kind of a catch-all for all that. But I do think that having a dynamic viewpoint, being open to customer feedback, also taking advantage of private offers, because for AI Can, what we're really hoping to do is partner with system integrators and MSPs and activate a channel. And so what we'd like to be able to do is like, can we use Marketplace for channel activation by taking advantage of private offers? So even though we have kind of our thinking going in with Can is we'll charge a monthly subscription because we fully expect architectures like MCP and AI agents to be very, very dynamic. We're going to invest our time in creating architectural blueprints that Can would be able to absorb and push out. But we also want to be able to reserve the right to do private offers. And if we have a certain SI that comes along that says, we'll take care of that bit, we'll buy a bulk of Can up front. Here's a private offer. We don't want to exclude that. We want to keep that on the table.
Awesome. All right, let's cover readiness, the next step in our sequence. So we try to make this a little more digestible by bucketing this into 3 categories. You've got the technical, commercial, and operational. So what does technical readiness look like for you with your experience, Michael?
I think a couple things. The biggest learning we've had is right now in this moment of AI, there tends to be a big gap between the DevSecOps sort of engineering community and the data science AI, model engineering community. And I think what's happened is the sort of model, especially in generative AI, there's been so much emphasis on whether it's techniques like, prompt engineering or, grounding agents with RAG, or just all of those techniques around sort of model management, ML ops, LLM, prompt engineering. That's kind of become its own space. And then meanwhile, DevOps is its own, getting those two together. So having a well integrated mechanism, and I think this is something that especially a tool like Foundry does pretty well, is, resource management and starting to see these things as Azure resources, and then really looking at your Azure bill and seeing, okay, what is my storage cost, if I have to provision Cosmos DB, if I'm provisioning, AI search to do RAG, how do all these things kind of fit together? And then really understanding that sort of that big picture architecture, and then how Foundry can kind of play a role in accelerating that was really key for us.
Yeah, and I think just doubling down that the distribution benefit of provisioning through Foundry, again, like thinking through who that customer might be if they're already a Microsoft customer, that model billing is flowing through to the customer's Azure invoice. You don't need a separate vendor contract, no separate procurement process. So meaningful simplification, when things can really quickly become unwieldy and complex. And then I think the other topic I'd love to hear from you about, Michael, metered billing integration. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it really depends again on the business use case. I mean, the good news about Marketplace is it's very flexible. You can have multiple plans, so you could have different meters for different customer segments. So I think you have to first understand, and this is very, very pertinent in the era of agents, because increasingly we're starting to think about agent-based pricing agent-based systems on outcomes instead of traditional licenses. Like per seat licenses don't really make sense because the agents, it's not really it's not necessarily used by you. I mean, it might be used by a user, but it almost kind of is a user in some respects. Monthly subscription might not really make sense because the agent's kind of doing so many jobs. You're not really subscribing to an agent. It's really kind of doing jobs. And so if you think about metering on the outcomes, so number of documents reviewed, number of emails sent and classified, number of, whatever the unit is. So basically figure out that unit of work for the agent. And then you could always write, multiple plans. And again, the offer is it should be dynamic. So don't hesitate to test one out, do some A/B testing, keep it as a private offer and invite folks in, try those meters out, and then you can always gather data and make informed decisions there.
Awesome. And then also within technical, we've got that data flow diagram. So before you choose that offer type and before you get to that commercial readiness and you're even thinking about partner center, this data flow diagram is something that's going to be pretty critical. So do not overlook this step. Essentially, you're outlining the data that your agent is going to ingest, process, and store. And as we covered, first of all, that's the thinking behind the offer type decision. But if you are selling to enterprises, they will be asking for this in procurement. Any of those regulated industries, they have hard requirements where the data lives. And so SaaS multi-tenancy may not be actually workable for your customer.
And it's changing in real time. So in the US, you have the NIST AI risk management framework that's recently shipped. EU AI Act is very, very real and toothy in this side of the world. So I think this is constantly evolving, and the
Yeah.
only way that you stay kind of current with that is those data flow diagrams and really understanding, are customers bringing data to you? Are you putting infrastructure there? What's the grounding data that your AI solution absolutely must have? Are there public data set? Is there kind of a mix where you have to go out and enrich with public data? And really having transparency around how all that data kind of comes together is quite critical. It was really exciting to see kind of some of the build announcements with the IQ platform, Fabric
Yeah.
IQ. I think there's a lot of governance technology that Microsoft is really investing in that I think could really do a lot for this. But again, even there, it's going to be really, really critical to understand what of that is SaaS, what of that lives in customer tenant, what of that involves sort of enriching through public data sets. All of that is really on the publisher to keep front and center.
Awesome. And then moving over to that commercial piece, one of the things I think that we can definitely recommend for founders, developers, don't wait until your product is done to sign the publisher agreement. Start to think through that offer type, plan, pricing. then make sure that when you define your plans and you configure those landing pages and look for the certifications, you can parallel path this and sort of be ahead of the game. One thing to note is that certification is not a formality. It is a real technical review. So plan for at least one iteration. And then ISV success enrollment, which we call out here, that's really something I just want to flag here for people to use as a really valuable resource. It's an offer that is part of the Microsoft Partner Program. So if you are going to be publishing to Marketplace, ISV Success gives you access to credits for a development sandbox, GitHub, Copilot, and more. But the key thing here is you get technical review support. So as you're going through this publishing process, you can have someone who can help you catch mistakes, help you just speed things through while you're getting audited to make sure that you meet everything and are compliant with all of the policies for publishing within Marketplace. And Michael, I know you're in ISV Success. Is that right?
That is correct. And really quick, Olivia, while you're talking about the policies, I would love to show this resource has been critical for us in Learn is this set of certification policies. What I encourage anybody who's in this space, this is absolute essential reading. Is it first off, it tells you what every offer type needs. So to Olivia's point, going through and really understanding what are the fundamental non-negotiable requirements that your offer has to meet, and then it breaks it down by supplemental requirements by offer type. So you can really understand, and this is, I would say, doing this to Olivia's point very early on when you're still in the design phase, so you don't have any surprises when you're finally there getting ready to publish, and then you're like, oh no, here's a requirement or here's a certification check that I'm failing, when it is right here. So this material is really, really fundamental for publishers to really navigate, and we use it, absolutely all the time.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So last there we had the operational gate, and this is what happens after the customer buys. Do you have a support process? What are your SLAs? What do updates and rollback mechanisms look like? So you will be asked these questions by your customers. If they've got procurement and legal teams, you want to be prepared. And I do really want to emphasize scalability and governance as those critical requirements for agents specifically. I know, Michael, you were just mentioning like staying ahead of and just following the policies and the changes, especially across geos. Scalability in that agent context is not just like, can your infrastructure handle more requests, but does your agent produce consistent, reliable outputs at scale? Do you have guardrails on what the agent can and can't do? Is there an audit trail? You're going to get asked about this, and agents do need to operate within defined parameters. You want to have an audit log of every action and enable human in the loop checkpoints for irreversible operations.
Yeah, one other note too, Olivia, there's a nice, because you've given some really great practical guidance, and we actually have a tool that we've been using quite a bit, Appvisor. I just want to show that really quick
Oh,
as
yeah.
a really nice way to, like, a lot of Olivia's guidance there and best practices. It's all sort of codified in Appvisor. And if I show you really quick here, hopefully the screen share shows that. One of my favorites, and this is one we're using absolutely all the time, like on a weekly basis. It's the offer listing optimization. So here I can sign in with my publisher account. So it's going to do a check, and then it's actually going to pull up my listing here. So I'll actually be able to see, it'll say, oh, we see it's Michael, and we see he's, yeah, here you go. It detected AI can, and here you go. It's got my details. Yes, I want to look at that offer. And right there, it's giving me personalized. So there's an AI agent behind the scenes here, and it's actually grading my offer. It's like average. Okay, I got some work to do, and I've actually got some work in flight because I use this tool and I'm actually taking action on it. But it's got these categories like value proposition, solution description. Michael, you're too in the weeds with it. Make it so that people can understand. So it's really, really a handy tool, and constantly it's the kind of thing where, again, don't just think about your offer published once and whew, I'm done. Forget. No, constantly go back and evaluate yourself, reevaluate your listing, and don't be afraid to make lots of changes. And iterate. One of the things I've been working on is just small changes. Don't worry about necessarily. Okay, I've got to move all these things to a 5 out the gate. Maybe I can just get everything to a 3-5. Slowly. In this part of the world, we like to say "siga siga," and then we'll make some improvements there.
Awesome. So let's talk about release, and if there's any questions that anyone has on like topics or areas that we've covered so far, please throw them in the chat now, and we'll make sure that we can interrupt our scheduled program to clear those. But coming back to that earlier question, I think someone asked about sort of like listing and just selling through your website direct or taking advantage of the Microsoft Marketplace. I think you're grokking like this isn't the lightest lift in the world. There's a lot of thought and a lot of purpose and decisions and reading, etc., that goes along with it. But it is so powerful if you're able to take those steps, be methodical about it. It matches who you're trying to sell to. And so just wanted to share, the visual of what's happening there. Like the marketplace is the storefront, and that's where what you write in your offer is so important. This is how your value proposition, this is how someone understands, like, is this for me? Is this something that I'm interested in? What else is in this category as I'm trying to look for, an analytics solution or observability solution? You are able to be surfaced across the different types of stores that Microsoft has with that breadth of product suite. And then there's also all of our distributed marketplace and channel partners who can sell to an SMB in Singapore if you've got that relationship. So there is a lot that you can plug into here. So just want to reiterate that as you come back and you sort of think about like, what's the end state? What am I trying to achieve? And you're really being methodical and thoughtful of each step along the way. And we also we've alluded to co-sell, but I want to pause on that first because we're in the weeds. We talk about it all the time. Other sellers also as well, other Microsoft partners. But if you're newer to this is a really powerful like compensation alignment with the Microsoft field team. It essentially means that Microsoft field sellers are now going to be aligned with flagging your product to their customers, and they will receive financial credit for that. So you are activating a sales force that's trying to support and help their own named accounts. And 95% of that Fortune 500 run on Azure. And so getting a solution into that co-sell eligibility listing moment within Microsoft Marketplace is something that ISV success can help. The documentation can help. There are revenue and some technical milestones. And I don't want to belittle the like you get this badge and things just happen. Again, this all takes some work and some strategy. But Michael, if we haven't fully covered, also maybe you want to speak to I know you've been going through this process for your enterprise facing products, and also that MAC eligibility. And so being able to tap into that customer commitment with Microsoft where they already have committed spend, 100% can count towards the purchase of your solution once you become co-sell eligible.
It's something we're super excited about is that, and just the reach of other Microsoft partners. So also I see there the distribution partners. So we have a really interesting emerging partnership with a distributor that helped us realize that, because sometimes we go into pre-sales motions with AICAN where the customer doesn't have Azure. They're interested in potentially procuring Azure. We actually set up to be a CSP, an indirect reseller, with the distributor's help. So we basically buy Azure in bulk, and then we can package it with AICAN. So there's lots of these interesting programs that Microsoft offers, co-sell, CSP distributor, where it gives you lots of optionality to then go to market with customers.
That's awesome. I love how you're reselling the Azure and finding creative ways to get the deal process going and make those go through. So as we're coming up on time, if you have any feedback, if this has been helpful, if there's other areas or specific topics, within the realm of like architecting, figuring out your offer type, what does the full flow look like of like model procurement from Foundry, getting into the Microsoft Marketplace? Would love to hear from you. We're thinking about this all the time and want to make sure that things that we provide are valuable and actionable, and ready for you to take advantage of today. So please share feedback. And then I think we've got, let's see, just some resources to leave you with. And I believe our moderators will also be sharing, if they haven't already, some links in the chat. But first, you should check out the marketplace if you haven't. Take a look at the different categories. Take a look at the different organizations and businesses that you may recognize, others you may not, that are in your category, how they're positioning themselves. If you need other types of resources around development patterns or templates, some of those questions around compliance and what's required in joining these different programs, visit that website for software companies, the AKA link. And then the tech documentation is our single source of truth. So always start there. We may have items that can elaborate or bring in some case studies and things like that are in parallel to those, but really always start with our tech docs. And then we did have a GitHub repo put together with many of these links for build. So also encourage anyone who's interested to check that out. So yeah, with that, I think we're at time. Michael, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience. I know this group can learn a ton from what you've already faced, especially at this intersection of like the business and the technical, and with the technology changing so quickly, not just like jumping the gun on forgetting about some of those key business forks in the road that you need to address before you put hands.
My pleasure, Olivia. Thanks for having us. And it was really great to, again, use all these resources your team has been providing to help us. We've definitely accelerated the business tremendously as a result.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Michael, for the amazing presentation we just had with you today. And thank you all for joining. We are always looking to improve your experience. So if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find the link to our survey on the screen or in the chat. We'll see you on the next one.